So, hello everyone to another podcast. Today we have with us David Sinclair Black. David is the founder and owner at the Prospectiv agency. So, he's based out of UK, and what he has been doing at Prospectiv is something phenomenal. They have scaled from zero to $50,000 MRR in just last 8 months with a headcount of 8 people and serving over 50 plus clients right now. So, David, thank you very much for joining us today. And we would love to learn from you how to scale an agency to such a good customer count and MRR count, because that's the dream. You're just
Oh,
around 30,000 MRR or so away from a $1 million ARR, right?
yep,
So that's
yeah.
the dream. So how would we go about it? How would someone go about it? So again, David, thank you very much for joining today.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sushant. And yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. So David, would you like to tell us a bit more about yourself to begin with?
Yeah, sure. So my story with Prospectiv actually started, ironically enough, or unsurprisingly enough, in the music industry, where I was running a music marketing agency that did Facebook ad, Google ad, playlisting for like independent artists on Spotify and also a few record labels. The way in which I was getting clients at the time was primarily through Instagram DM. And that was an issue because it was really hard to scale. And I came up with this kind of unique way of like offering people free music reviews. I'd say, hey, look, I've made this music review for you. And I hadn't actually made the music review yet. I was just sending DMs, and anyone that would come back and say, yeah, I'm interested, I would then go and film a customized Loom video. I DM them, and it was like, I was the only person doing it. It was extremely unique, and it was my best outreach method that I was using. It's how I grew the business to six figures. The problem with it is that it wasn't scalable, and I was the only person doing it. So I was kind of playing around with, the idea of cold email. I'd never really done it before. This was back in 2022. Clay didn't really exist, even though it did. No one was really properly using it. ChatGPT was a few years or a year off of, being publicly available. But I just started writing emails, and I started using Lemlist. I just sent emails to lists that I found on Apollo in the most unprofessional way possible, and I was getting hundreds of leads. So I really enjoyed this way of getting clients, and I started offering it to music clients. And then I started offering it to people outside of the music industry who were maybe willing to, pay a little bit more money than your average independent musician. And that's kind of how it started. That's how I started in cold email. But the business perspective, we formed in January of this year, so 2024. And as you quite rightly mentioned, we've gone from, zero to, just over a few hundred K in total revenue. We're currently sitting at a MRR, about $50,000 US. It just continues to grow, and we're probably projected to finish this year on, about 400K in total revenue. So we've learned a lot along the way in doing so, but really my roots started in something completely different. But like most people, you have a business, you have an idea, you have a service that you're looking to sell. Cold email seems to make sense. You try it out, and here we are. So we're making the best of it.
Yeah, really awesome and really inspiring for anyone who actually wants to start a cold email outreach agency. So
Absolutely.
that's amazing. So what we'll do, David, is that we'll go step by step for anyone new to start an cold email outreach agency, right? So you can give us your formula. How would you go about it if you had to go all over it again? Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to go. Yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
go on. No,
go.
you go.
Okay. So let's first start with offer creation, right? So the first thing would be, how would you structure an offer that resonates with businesses needing, cold email outreach service to help them schedule sales meetings or demos? So how would you structure this?
So I like to think from a first principles perspective. So ignoring all of the noise in the marketplace, ignoring all of the advice that people are giving you. And so think about this from the perspective of actually really what works in the marketplace, and always has worked and always will work. And at the end of the day, when you're running a business, especially when you're running a startup, all you're really looking for is product market fit. The way in which you find product market fit as a business that has no experience, no case studies, has no real brand at all, is by picking a market where you can have a competitive advantage. Competitive advantage has more to do, has a lot more to do with than just the offer that you deliver. So before I go into the offer that you create, it's first worth understanding that you need to be in a marketplace that is even going to pay attention to it. For example, if I send 1,000 cold emails to marketing agencies in the UK right now, with an incredible offer. It could be you pay nothing, you only pay per call, and I guarantee you 10 in the first month. Because there are 5 other emails that look exactly like that have been sent to this individual in the morning, they're not going to be receptive to it. So first, pick a market in which you have a competitive advantage. Now, I won't go into the details of this, I'll go into offer creation, but some bullet points that I would give anyone that's listening comes back to what you know. So I come from the music industry. I started with cold email with musicians. Start with what you're passionate about, something that you can drive behind your clients and that you will create a culture within what is soon to be a company that is more than just we write cold emails, but also, of course, to a market that has financial capability. And that's what I was missing with the musician. So I went from musician to creative agency because they're both creatively inclined individuals and so on. Pick a market, pick one market. Don't just cold email anyone. Do some proper real research. When it comes to offer creation, what you're effectively doing is limiting the perceived risk of working with a new agency, because the majority of people listening to this are going to be starting a new agency. And the main thing that people come to you with is, you've got 30 minutes of my time. I'm speaking to you. I like you. I don't believe that you are even capable enough of delivering me the result that you promised. This is where guarantees become effective. I'll go into guarantees in a moment, but really the main thing that you're selling beyond just the perceived risk of your service is also going to be the perceived likelihood of outcome. So this is obviously what Alex Hormozy talks about a lot, where if I'm to work with you, what's the likelihood that you're going to be able to achieve the result in the first place? Beyond the fact, if you don't achieve it and I get my money back, am I just going to be wasting my time here? Those are kind of the two things that you need to be concerned with: perceived likelihood of outcome, but on the other hand, and this is, kind of what Alex Hormozy preaches, is what guarantees you have to protect against that, but also be concerned with. Business owners are more concerned with the time that they would have to spend if it goes wrong, rather than the actual money. For Prospectiv, I'll just tell you what we did. We started with 10 band qualified meetings in 90 days. That may seem like a long period of time, but I'll explain why in a moment. 10 band qualified meetings in 90 days, or 100% of your money back. The way that this looks and the way that we justify it to a client perspective is starting with a qualified meeting. Because this is what I understood my market as one thing. They didn't just want leads. They didn't just want meetings. They wanted people that could actually buy their product or service. And we crushed it. Our client did get bank qualified meetings. Literally on the first call that they would have spoken to, one client that comes to mind, they closed for about $6,000. The way that I justified it to them is that we may need to get you 30 meetings in order to have a truly qualified 10. We have to get it to you within 90 days, which means that if you can predict over the next 90 days that you're going to have 10 truly qualified opportunities, multiply that by your total revenue from a client, let's call it 6,000, is $60,000. And let's say that you have a 10% closing rate. So you're going to bring on $6,000 in your revenue. If I'm to charge you £3,000 and you make a rough profit of, let's say, $3,000, $2,500, from a business owner's perspective, that makes sense. Your terms and conditions are correct. If you seem to be a decent enough individual, if you seem to have ethics and morals, you seem to be relatively articulate, people will believe you, and it makes business sense in order to do so. I think the advice that I would give is to people listening that don't quite know how to piece an offer together, and they just slap guarantees and they slap things, like lots of different things on top of their service in the hope that it sounds interesting. Focus on removing risk. Focus on giving the business owner an idea of how long it would take and exactly what that result is going to be. So predictability, and just go for it. There are lots of different ways to do it. I personally wouldn't recommend pay per call. I think from a systems perspective, it's disgusting. I think that you can get looped into, well, this isn't a lead and this is really a lead and therefore I'm not going to pay you for it. Have retainers, have an upfront payment, promise a result within that retainer, within that payment, that after X period of time, that if we don't achieve a result, then we will refund you the difference, we'll refund you the amount. And whatever that result is, whether it's leads, whether it's meetings, or it's bank qualified meetings, that's how I started out. Footnote, we've subsequently moved on. We actually no longer have a guarantee. We no longer have, a refund policy in place per se that's linked to a guarantee, but we're in a different stage of business now. Getting started, that's exactly what it did. What took me from earning a couple grand a month to earning my first 20 grand a month, and people buying it like hotcakes, and it worked really well. So those are kind of a few words of advice that I would give around offer creation. I'm not sure if there's any kind of questions you have back to it, but I hope that's kind of like a decent amount.
Yeah, interesting. So you would say that some key elements of an irresistible offering, payback or refunds if we do not hit some metrics that we have decided on the meeting schedule and so on. Then there has to be predictability for the client.
Right.
Predictability has to be there for the client where they can expect leads on a rolling basis every month, and ideally do not go for pay per call, as you might get sucked into all of the things where this is a lead, this is not a lead, and even if someone is closed and they might say that is not a lead really.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah,
it's a tough
those are the
nut to
three
crack.
key points really. Yeah, I think the key thing there is predictability. If you can tell a business owner within X period of time that I will achieve you X result, and if not, I'll refund you the difference. 90 days was a decent enough size window for us to like realistically get the result, but also at the same time, and therefore delay any potential cash flow issues, delay any potential stress. We're not delivering it on a monthly basis. We offered a one-time payment, which comes with benefits and disadvantages. The benefit is you get an upfront payment, they pay in full, you get money in the bank if you sign up X amount of clients. Where we made a mistake is that we then had so many clients come on board in 1 month that our service quality deteriorated. So there's a fine balance there. I am now of the nature that we don't actually take upfront payments anymore. We just like to have a predictable monthly retainer income, but that's a separate conversation. You have to balance those things. That every single way, like every single decision that you make within your business isn't good or bad. It just has different outcomes. It has different advantages and different disadvantages. And depending on who you are listening to this, whether you're just starting out, you're trying to break through to your next milestone in the business, you have to pick and choose what realistically makes the most sense to you. Typically, you will know what that is. You just don't really want to confront it. At the start, it was, we need customers. So how do we best get those customers? Now it's going to be, how do we keep our customers? How do we upsell them? And how do we continue to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace? But yeah, you nailed it. Those 3 points are the main thing.
Interesting, really. So once our offer is created, something like this, we are offering leads 10 meeting scheduled in 90 days. Let's say this is our offer that we are finalizing on. Now, coming to, finalizing an ICP. So what process do you think someone should go for to define what ICP should they, target, who might need these cold outreach service? I think one of your points was very valid, that go for an industry at the start, which you know already, so that you can create a offer for them, a personalized offer for that industry that no one else will, just like you did for the music industry, because
Yeah.
not many people will switch from music to cold email. So you can draft a more compelling copy, a more compelling cold email than others might.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, with us at the moment, we primarily focus, ironically, I say not go for marketing agencies. We work majority with marketing agencies at the moment, but we work with any real service-based small to medium-sized enterprise. And typically, like our niche is now small to medium-sized enterprise, specifically in the UK. We only really work with UK businesses. On the odd whim, we'll work with the US or other European countries, but like 95% UK. Small to medium size, and these clients have to be outreaching to companies which are basically sized between 0 upwards of no more really than 100. So these are SMEs reaching out to other SMEs. Now, but that's not where we started. I started in, providing cold email services to people in the music industry because at the time, it's the only thing that I knew. I didn't know anything else. So instead of asking the question first of which ICP should I pick, the first question that you should be asking as the listener is going to be, if I was only able, if my financial success depended on picking a market which I knew better than any other market out there, which one would I go for? If my financial, let's say you want to make £1 million a year. Okay, cool. And the only way that you can make £1 million or $1 million, million yen, whatever it is, rupees a year, maybe not 1 million rupees, it might be a little bit less, but you get the point. And it depended on me only picking a market, which I know. What would that be? For a few reasons. You understand it. You speak the same language as your client. You're able to pick up on things that other agencies aren't able to, and your conversion rates will go up. You might not scale to the moon, but you don't need to focus on scale at the moment. You need to get some money in the bank. And then the question becomes, what ICP can I target? Well, it's not what ICP can I target. You now know which one you need. When it comes to the ICP, which is typically regarding company size, job titles, etc., this work is now relatively easy because if you know that, for example, you work best with, let's say, B2B outreach for like a random one. Let's say that you provide like catering and food stuff and anything to do with like you work on behalf of caterers that are trying to get into like hotels or whatever the case. Because you now understand that, you can speak the same language and blah, blah, blah. You know the same company size, like you're only going to be working with catering industry. You're only going to be working with head of outreach. If you're selling an outreach product, it might make sense that you go to the head of sales or the head of outreach, or if it's a small company, the CEO. Just in general rule of thumb that I would recommend to people is that anyone above 100 employees, don't bother going to the C-suite, or at least don't bother going to the CEO, don't bother going to the co-founder. It could work. Every now and again, you may get a response. But these people with emails, they barely ever check, really. They might, but they might not. They probably won't. Also, when you get to that level, really 250 employees above, they start to implement email infrastructure into their company, which prevents them from getting emails which have the slight potential of being a risk to the organization. Not all the time, but generally speaking is what I'm speaking for the rules for this podcast. Anything above that, you're then going to be looking to go into building a relationship with someone that's lower down that will take it to their director and so on. So depending on who you are that's listening to this, I doubt that's going to be the people here that will be going larger than that, but just in case you are. For anyone below 100 employees, generally speaking, you can go to the C-suite. If you really want for your campaign to deliver results in a much quicker period of time, that 20 employees go to the CEO, go to the founder, 10 employees, especially 0 employees, of course, there's only one person to go to. You will help yourself by going to the head of sales or sales-related job titles and so on. So that's the job title side of it. The company side kind of speaks for itself. Any other rules of thumb are that generally speaking, cold email works best for people that are below 100. If they're also looking to outreach to 100, that's what we're doing. It does become a much longer sales process and more difficult, and clients stay a lot less longer because the sales cycle is so much longer at large companies. So those are just a few ideas that I have. But I think really the main philosophy and the main point here is that once you know which market you understand better than any other, the ICP will make sense. And it becomes easy to pick those filters and pick those job titles in because you already know who the market is, if that makes sense, rather than thinking about which database is the best database to go for it.
And let's say, David, there are some people who are maybe, just fresh out of college, just want to start, and they don't have a prior experience, or they have not been in an industry as such of, let's say, in the music industry or maybe the agency business. So what do you recommend? What are some, industries according to you that require a cold outreach appointment setting solution like you provide? So
Really
what are
good
some
question.
agencies that you might recommend?
So if we break it down to the absolute basic, go for companies or industries which would fit into what we describe as a demand generation industry. So as opposed to a demand capture industry, we used to do B2B outreach for an insurance company, for example, and we won them a very large policy, but it took many, many, many months to be able to get to the point where we got them that lead, because people look for insurance one time a year. Okay, so that's an issue. B2B outreach can be provided to any client really at any time because people always need leads, but not the same. It's not be said for the same for all of the people that you're looking to outreach to. Demand generation industries will be, branding and design, creative video, especially in the social media rates, Facebook ads, Google ads. It will be any client that you can do B2B outreach for that their service is always going to be in need of, and likewise yours is always going to be in need of too. So any category of marketing agency, but let's get specific here. Pick ones that are just marketing agencies, video agencies, creative ad agencies, logo design. These all have their own unique pain points which are different from each other, and it's just not worth bulking marketing agencies into one group because they each have their own different problems and required solutions. Other ones that you could be going for are SaaS, so software as a service. Crunchbase is a great data source for this. You're always going to be finding companies which are recently funded, which are led by smart enough people to understand that they need outreach. These are typically companies that have no real formalized marketing strategy. So you can be the ones to create it for them. I guess kind of beyond that, any kind of technology orientated company. What I mean by that is I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing B2B outreach for like IT firms and so on. Like I wouldn't recommend doing outreach for anyone that sells commodity, which is just based on price and availability. Anyone that's technology orientated that maybe makes CRM or provides CRM solutions or does HubSpot consulting or anything like that, typically with industries which are good to get into. If you're fresh out of college, if you're new to this, I would still highly recommend that you just rack your brain a little bit and think, okay, what are those industries that I understand the language of better than anything else? Because with that first client that you went with, the second client that you win, it's the experience that you gain that will then be able to take you on to those clients that are outside of your comfort zone, but are still, um, that will be more valuable to you in the future, perhaps not right now. I started in the music industry. Now we're now working with like random art technology companies, not in my sphere of comfort or was in my sphere of comfort at all. But I got there through starting with what I knew. What did you study at college? Does that have any particular relevance? Is there any businesses that you met or people that you know, or your dad or your mum? I'd still start with that where you can, but if not, demand generation industry. Anyone that is constantly requiring that their product be sold, irrespective of season, irrespective of contract policy, irrespective of the weather, irrespective of, political circumstances. Insurance is once a year, marketing's all the year round. So that's kind of what I'd recommend.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. And from what I understand, David, for the listeners, go with some type of marketing agency. So it doesn't have to be, let's say, digital marketing. It can be outside advertising, creative agency, videos, music, marketing, podcast advertisements, and there's just so much in when you say marketing
Well, it's funny
agencies.
that you say that because we work with a podcast client and like they, if you go into Apollo and you type in media production, they will come up, but no one's looking for them because everyone's going straight to marketing agencies. But media production, this particular company, they help people produce their own podcast and also do the marketing for them. So, but you don't know that if you don't do the research, you just do what everyone else does. If you go into Apollo and type in design, you'll come up with design agency. This isn't your typical marketing agency. They don't do Facebook ads. They make menus for restaurants. These people still need
Yeah.
people to be outreach to. So yeah, do the research.
Yeah, do the research and find the companies that you can have an edge in targeting, and that should be well. So the next ones, so now that we have created our offer, right, and we have identified our ICP, what are some ways to find leads? Apollo, as you mentioned, is one of the ways. Anything else you recommend?
Yeah. Apollo is kind of Apollo is the knife block in the kitchen. Like every kitchen has to have them, but it's not to say that you have the best possible knife block in the world. They might be blunt. They might, you might need to replace them. They might be 10 years old, rusty, and, they look a little bit orange. Apollo's needed, but I speak to so many agency owners that quite naively, especially people that just start out for the first time, that think that Apollo is the only data source out there. I would just kind of ask anyone listening to this to even remove the idea from their mind of data source. Imagine that Apollo didn't exist. Imagine that Crunchbase didn't exist. Where would your people on the internet be hanging out? And then how would you find their information? So the way that I would kind of view this is that if I knew that all of my prospects hung out on a particular Reddit thread, how would I but I knew that Reddit thread was really valuable to me and it was actually worth scraping. How would I go and get it? If I knew that all of my potential customers hung out on, I don't know, let's say Reddit or some particular forum, something like that. Don't think from the perspective of the data source. You have to think from the perspective of the ICP first, and obviously your industry first before going to the data source. So to answer your question simply, you considered Crunchbase? Have you considered BuiltWith? Have you considered scraping G2 reviews? Have you considered using Google Maps? Have you considered using Outbase? I think it's Outbase or Outscraper. Either one of those where you can go and easily scrape Yelp reviews, Amazon reviews, like location-based businesses where we worked with a company once that provided bespoke software to martial arts gyms. You're not going to find that on Apollo.
So these are basically when you say scraping, using scraping Yelp, Google Maps, and all these tools. I believe that works more for local businesses.
Yeah, I mean it can do.
Mom and
But
pop
then
stores.
you then got to ask yourself the question like, does my client or do my potential clients of mine, like, do they have a Google presence? Because more likely than not, finding them on there is going to get you more response than it would do from just the general Apollo search. Got to remember, Apollo has hundreds of thousands of users and people are all using the same data. So where can you really stand out? You're completely right. Like we use Outscraper for anyone that's targeting local businesses, and local outreach will always outperform generalized outreach because location I guess just us being humans and wanting to have a relation to people that live near us or in a similar community is always really good. A little PS line at the bottom. PS, I heard the XYZ restaurant's really good. Happy to meet you for a coffee there. More relevant. It's in someone's mind. It feels more real to them. It's more tangible. People prefer tangible over the intangible. You're right. Yeah. But I guess all I'd be trying to do is open people's minds to the idea of exploring other ways of getting data, being, kind of rolling up your sleeves and scraping your own data, provided that it's useful, if it means that your emails are going to be sent to people where they'll be more relevant. Not to go on a tangent, but I think that each email agency has a responsibility to make sure that their emails go to the right people with the right message, because otherwise what happens is we all lose. Email just continues to gain a reputation of being spammy and unreliable and unpredictable and blah, blah, blah. It's the reason that Google and Outlook have put such stringent policies in place is because people abuse it. So I think you have a duty to do it, but also your campaigns will improve. Yes, use Apollo. Yes, use Crunchbase. Make sure that you do it in a way in which is, of course, targeted and responsible and blah, blah, blah. But give yourself a challenge. Use a different database. Try something new. We've been using Crunchbase a lot recently, especially for SaaS companies. It's useful. We're building an account list first based on the account list based certain company size, certain revenue, and then we go into Apollo and we find the job titles there working really well. But most agencies will just scrape a list from Apollo and then call it a day.
Interesting. So now we have our offer created, we have finalized our ICP, and we have also found the leads using these tools. Like for local, go with Outscraper. For SMBs or SaaS businesses, Crunchbase and Apollo are the way to go. Now, what are some tips you will give David on writing a cold email to get the first client?
Good question. So I'm quite proud of myself, really. And I'll tell you why. Because when I first started writing cold emails, I didn't have Play. There was no ChatGPT API that I was using. There was no fancy tricks. I didn't really even know who I was writing emails to. So what I was forced to do was to use a framework which would, reader into reading an email and they don't even know who I am. I've got 0 personalized lines, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't rely on that. I had to rely on relevancy. So in the cold email community, as you all know, there's this constant battle all the time between relevancy and personalization. And people always pick a relevancy because if you have an email that's relevant to someone's current situation, rather than just saying we went to the same university, one is, how can I describe it? One is that relevancy just always has more, can't quite think of the right way to describe it. You get the point.
So relevancy in cold emails in terms of if there is a marketing agency which does videos, so creative videos, the email body or the content of the email should resonate with them that, okay, they are talking about my agency. Even if you are making a general statement, let's say that, your videos are amazing. I heard about it from a friend. The lead that we are sending the email to should feel that, okay, this has been written for me specifically. So is that what you mean?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So let's say that I'm targeting video agencies, and because I know my market and I understand my market and I've built my ICP around a market which I come from and which I understand. I'll give you an example. So with musicians, so like a classic example with musicians is that when you're put into a playlist, so let's say that you go onto Spotify right now and you're looking for like rap artists, and you get served with a playlist that is just full of like UK-based rap artists. Give you, everyone listening, a little bit of an understanding here, a little bit of music industry education. People buy playlists, like they own them, and they have like, let's say 10,000 followers. And they will then rent those playlists out. So you might pay £500 to be on a playlist for a month, and that's valuable to you because you're getting listened to 10,000 people that haven't heard of you before. But the big problem is that number one, these playlists are always botted. So they have bots on them. They're not real listeners. Or number two, even if they are real, they will listen to your song once because it's in a playlist. They'll skip to the next. They won't follow your page. They won't go on your Instagram. They won't become a fan. So there's this, I'm now speaking about a market which I understand, which can then be folded into the email. Now, versus another email to a musician. Hey, first name, I can get you XYZ plays in a gazillion, in this amount of time. Versus, hi, first name, correct me if I'm wrong, but I typically found that independent musicians like yourself, when they're put into playlists, because I came across, so it's just a fire alarm. Hi, first name, correct me if I'm wrong, but typically speaking with musicians, I found that when they get put in a playlist, that people listen to their music once, and then they never follow them, they never follow up on Instagram and blah, blah, blah. The reason that I'm reaching out there is because I've developed a system which does, and then you go into solving that pain point. The relevancy is being able to describe somebody's pain better than they can in their own words. As if I've just come to you right now and I understand everything that's going on inside your business and I can articulate it in a way which really like you get and which kind of agitates you to think, yeah, like this is something that I'm going through. People will get on the phone with you. They'll think, I don't give a shit what you say next. I'm going to get on the phone with you just because you understand me so well. I have to speak to this person because if they understand it and they can describe it better than I can, then surely this person can help me out. Versus my first name, I saw that we went to the same university. I run a playlist agency. Would you like to jump on the phone call this week? It's not going to work as well. So from a copywriting perspective, always start from a place of relevancy. In other words, you have to be able to articulate in a few ways separate pain points that you can throw into that email that would get them to think, yeah, this is something that I'm going through. If you can't do that, then kiss the idea goodbye, quick cold email, and never write one again because you're not going to succeed. The way that we do this for our clients, it may change in the length of the email. It may change in the way that we address them. It may change and we may use a personalized line, but the core is always the same. Correct me if I'm wrong. Speaking with other agency owners like yourself, speaking with people like yourself, I have found that, and then give them the opportunity to read that line. The more potent that line is, the better your copy will be, the more leads you'll get, etc. But it starts from that base foundation of understanding your market.
Interesting. And how do we scale this, system of outreach? So we have to personalize the emails and we have to take, the name of the issue that they might be facing better than they can explain. So how can we go about this?
So you don't need to worry about scaling it. I mean, if you're talking about like email sending software, then that's kind of an easy problem to solve. Like,
Yeah,
with you
not
guys,
exactly scaling in that sense. Let's say I want to hit the right mark and understand the problem of 10,000 leads a month and you write this perfect sentence to them that will make them think that, okay, this person can explain my problem to me better than I could have done it myself. And I have to get on
sure,
a call with them.
sure, sure,
So
sure.
in that sense,
The one thing to remember is that we're in the sales world. Like, we're not really in the cold email world. Like, we're in the business of getting sales conversations started. So let's think about this from a different perspective. So if we think about it from a sales perspective, the number one foundation creating a sale, even in the first place, before anyone walks into your store or visits your website or whatever, is I am in need of your product. Timing. So timing is extremely important with sales. If I send 50 emails to people that wanted my solution, but they'd already got it last month, we're now irrelevant. So it's timing. You never speak to a prospect that needs your service last month. They need it now. You're listening to this podcast now because you are looking at or starting a cold email agency. Now, you're not doing this for when you turn 50. Okay. So people do things within a timeline. And to understand it from that perspective is to say that we're never going to win everyone over. If I have a list of 1,000 prospects, irrespective of I've mentioned a pain point and blah, 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 and it's well written and I've got a good lead list, you're not going to suck up all of the market because that's where timing comes in. Every single cold email that I've sent that gets a lead generated, they've been going through that and they need us at exactly that point in time. They're not considering it. And most of them will consider it 2 to 3 weeks from now, but that's because they're looking to provide it. So remember that you're not going to win everyone, but what you want to do is give yourself the best possible chance. And come back to your question of scaling it. It starts with understanding the market. It starts with understanding the pain point. You don't need to have any fancy personalized lines yet. Start with the pain point, go into a relevant call to action, make the email, as I say, be able to articulate the pain point better than they can understand their own words. If you need to have personalization afterwards, there are tools like Clay, for example, that we use, or, Sheets, and you can use an API with ChatGPT to write something, but I'm not going to go into those details yet because I really want people to understand the importance first of relevance. And then we can go into the fancy stuff. But for me, start with the pain points. You can use the same template again and again and again. Use some syntax. For those that don't know what syntax is, it's just 3 or 4 or 5 or an unlimited amount of ways of saying the same word so that you can change and insert different words so that your email deliverability doesn't get impacted. You're not just sending the same email every single time. But the basis of the email should be exactly the same. You test different methods, you test different pain points, you send it to tons of prospects, you see what works, you see what doesn't, you just keep focusing on what does.
that makes absolute sense that no matter how good your offer is, how sure you are of the fact that you will be able to provide value and help the business book meetings, there always is a factor that are they ready? Are they ready for to solve this problem for themselves? It's not like a problem that, okay, I have this slight problem. I might fix it later down the year or so. I need to fix this today. So that's
Exactly.
one. Second, how okay are they with getting help from outside? That is also another factor because some people might just want to hire in-house. And then lastly, it also depends on if they want help or, if they believe in you or not.
Yeah. Yeah. 1000%. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are a few factors that would come into play while sending emails. So David, tell me, how many emails did you send before getting your first client?
Sure. Times have changed. We used to be able to send, I don't know, let's say I generate my first lead after 300 emails, 200 emails. This was back in 2022. We're in different times now where the majority of agencies I see will typically generate their first lead if everything's done well after about 850 emails, anywhere between 800 to 900 emails. And that's a good benchmark to follow, by the way, because you can have predictable metrics to understand when things are going wrong, or when they're going right. Alternatively, if you're getting something at 400 on one particular email template, scale that, earn off everything else. So that's what I'd be looking for. Lead rates have changed. Most agencies at the moment are getting a 0.5% lead rate. Back in 2022, I could get 6% lead rate or a 3% lead rate. We had one kind of client that was getting 15% lead rate. So every 100 people that we contact, we get 15 leads. Deliverability changed, the market changed, etc. But to bring that up to date, September of 2024, you're doing 0.5% on a lead rate. So every 100 leads, you get 5 leads. Every 100 prospects, you get 5 leads. And for roughly speaking, every 800 emails, the math may not kind of add up here correctly exactly as such. There are things that vary. Back of the napkin math, that's kind of what I'd be looking at. So if you've sent 1,600 emails and you've got no lead, probably a list problem, probably a deliverability problem. Some industries perform better than others. We like to work with industries where we can get a 0.5, or back in 2022, where we can get a 3% lead rate. Because these clients are going to stay longer. We get them more leads. Some industries just don't get as many leads as others. No one needs IT. No one needs Microsoft licenses. They've already got someone, but they do need marketing. They do need podcasting. They do need X, Y, Z. So that's kind of what I would say. Just rough back of the napkin. 800, 0.5%.
Interesting. So send around 800 emails is what you mean, and you should get around 9% of that as meetings scheduled.
0.5%. So I'm just doing the math now. 0.5% on 800 is 4 leads. I mentioned 1 lead per 800. So I realized that the math is off. But in my mind, if you can send 800 to 1,000-ish emails and get a lead, that's cool. 0.5%, you're doing well. Like, that's good at the moment. I would just say, yeah, roughly speaking, 800 to 1,000 emails, you're getting a lead. Cool. Keep it going. Because people reply at different times,
So
and
800
days
to
vary.
1,000. So 800 to 1,000 emails should get us a customer, or it should get the agency meeting scheduled with the
It should
potential customer.
get them a meeting scheduled. Yeah.
Okay.
And lead
So
generated. Yeah.
around 800 to 1,000 emails, cold emails should get a meeting scheduled. So we are just trying to benchmark this so that someone who is starting off today knows if he is on a good path, or maybe they have sent 10,000 plus emails already and there's just, they are just going in abyss and they keep sending emails and don't get any replies. So after sending how many emails as a B2B cold email outreach agency should they expect their first customer?
So I don't actually have the data on this. But I'll just do some back of the napkin math with you here. So if I bring up a calculator. So if it takes me 1,000 emails to get 1 lead, the data that I can give you is that 70% of any lead that we generate in Prospectiv on average will turn into a meeting. Okay, so if I want to get 10 meetings, I need to get 14.2 leads. Okay, so 14.2. And what we do is we just multiply this by 1,000. So we'll just call this 14,000 prospects. 14,000 prospects will give us, roughly speaking, 10 meetings, let's just say. If I've got the math wrong in this and you're listening to it, then please forgive me because math is not my strong point, but we'll just call it that for the moment, right? If you have a 10% closing rate, Cool. You'll be closing a client after about 14,000 prospects. It could be less than that. It could be 10,000. If you're selling in a market which is really niche and it's really difficult to find a particular product or service or find someone that can offer a solution to somebody, it can be way less. But I'm just basing this off of what I've seen emailing atypical industries like marketing and SMEs and so on, as I mentioned. I don't have the exact data on it, but if you're going off a 0.5% lead rate, the number that I can give you is 70% of leads to call. Going off a 10% closing rate, probably would want to increase the closing rate, get better sales, skills and so on. We're closing at about anywhere between 15 to 25%. So it really depends on your closing, on your ability to sell, on your sales cycle, how good you are at that, your average order value, blah, blah, blah. Let's call it 10 to 15K.
Awesome. That sounds wonderful. Your answers, I am sure, has been very helpful to all the people listening out there who want to start their own B2B cold outreach appointment scheduling business. So what would you say are some ways to qualify leads before moving forward on a meeting or closing the sale?
So going back to the kind of beginning of Prospectiv, and when we used to offer bank qualified meeting, this was by far one of the best ways that we could speak to leads that we would have a reasonable predictability would close. Like the biggest problem that you guys are having at the moment listening when it comes to lead generation and then getting them on a phone call and you realize some of these leads are not serious is because you haven't got a qualification process in place. First of all, and that's fine. I didn't, but I created one. And it's very, very simple. You write out a list of questions, would give you a reasonable understanding that this person is A, serious, because there's lots of people that just ask questions, but B, gives you an insight into their business to understand that you're not wasting your time. If you just speak with more qualified prospects, the biggest leverage that you can apply in your business is qualified appointments. And that also goes by extension that the biggest negative leverage in your business is a lack of qualified appointments, which doesn't just mean that you get more appointments, it means that you get qualified ones. So what this really means is that on your Calendly page, for example, like we do at Prospectiv, you can copy mine, is that if I take a sales meeting, we're asking the following question. What's your biggest challenge to increasing your business's revenue? What have you already tried? Why now? Why are you researching outsourced lead generation and sales development help specifically now? What pain are you going through at the moment? What's your dream outcomes? Like, am I going to be working with someone that's psychopathic and is thinking like all of the incredible things that I'm going to do for them, or are they, a little bit reasonable? They want to have a decent amount of calls and we could actually help them. The most important one, this is the most important one. What's your current monthly revenue? Don't work with anyone that's making less than 10 grand. They can't afford you, or at least they shouldn't be able to if your pricing's correct. And the one that we ask here is, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement and a question. We only take calls where the final decision maker will be present. Have you added or are you the decision maker to this call? Yes or no? And then there's another one here. How much of a priority is this for you to implement at the moment? Immediately, the next 2 weeks, the next 2 months, the next 2 years. Give people options. Don't ask open-ended questions and the qualification questions besides the ones that I've already mentioned at the beginning. When you want a quick answer about revenue, about how quick they're looking to make a decision, if the decision maker is there, close. When it comes to things where you're looking to gain an insight into why they've made that decision difficult with you, give them the opportunity to speak. So copy the one from my website, prospectiv.io, and that's the baseline that I'll use. Change it for your industry, change it for your personality type, change it for what you think will work for your business. But these absolutely have to be asked. Stick them on your Calendly page. When you generate a lead from email and you send that page to them, that's where they're going to be qualified. We don't qualify them at any other point of the sales process. Once it's done, it's done. And you know if a call is worth your time or not. But I promise you that the calls that we booked when we made this change, I cannot explain to you the increase in conversions that I haven't even looked at the data. All I knew is that we were making significantly more money. So the main reason that beyond the questions and the answers that we were getting, the only people booking calls were ones that would put 5 to 10 minutes aside to answer these types of questions. So already you're working with people that have a significantly higher intent and they're actually going to take the time seriously with you because they now have a cost involved with you that they want to get a result out of. If you're just booking calls and it's actually on my calendar and let's have a chit chat, it's very easy for them to decline, to not show, etc. We still have no shows, we still have declined, but they have significantly decreased. Put the questions on, stick them on the Calendly page, send them through. No one booked a call without answering them. And if they don't, then they're not worth your time anyway. The biggest leverage in your business is qualified appointment. By extension, if you just have an appointment without any qualification, you could be shooting a shot and hitting the target, or you're shooting it a shot, like you literally. So that's what I would say. Find qualification, make it simple.
Yeah, because if they don't need it right now, then maybe they need it after 2 years or so. Then what's the point of having that call? And it's a waste of time, and the chances of no show are very high.
Yeah,
And if the decision maker is not even there, so yeah, that automatically becomes a very difficult close.
yeah.
The last question, David, let's say someone is just starting off their outreach agency. What do you think they should price their service? Because you mentioned that the client should have at least $10,000 monthly revenue, right? So, what should be the price, or if you can give us a price range?
So I don't want to sound like a cliche podcast guest, but price is subjective. So instead of asking how much you charge what you would like and what would make sense for you. If you were to operate with just 10 clients at the moment and it's just one man show, do you want to be making 30 grand a month, 10 grand a month? Bear in mind that the cheaper that your product, yes, it's easier to sell, but the more painful your clients are going to be, the harder it is to scale, the more headache you have involved. So it's not really a question of price, but I will give you an answer of what I've done. So we started charging 3 grand for what is effectively a 90-day service. But let me remind you, we could provide that same service within 30 days. In fact, with one client, we got their results so quick that they had to refresh straight away. So we were charging 3 grand a month, but for some clients, it was 1 grand a month, even though the price tag was the same. To give you a simple answer, people are looking for lead generation services that are decent enough at 1 grand a month minimum, but that is very, very good. We charge 3, upwards of 6 to 9, and so on and so forth. It escalates with the more people that we contact. What are we providing? We're providing our brand, we're providing our expertise, we're providing my brand, my personal brand, all of the kind of accolades that we have that justifies our price now. But we started at 3, could have been 1 a month, could have been 3 a month, depending on how quick. When we switched to retainers, I reduced it to 1,500 a month. Bear in mind, 1,500 pounds a month for the value that you would deliver as a lead generation service, provided that you actually get the emails just sent, is worth infinitely more. I remember when I first started out, £1,500 sounded like a lot of money. You would be surprised how much money people spend on just absolute crap within their business, from food, travel, to employees that they know don't work out, to like just small things like Google Ads. If you look at the expense account on some of the businesses that you're outreaching to and you think you're charging too much, you're really charging enough at all. So I say that to say, I'll give you a ballpark brand, couple grand a month. But what are you providing? Don't do too much competitor analysis. No one really cares. We charge the same as a competitor of ours that's been around 7 years longer, has way more experience, and on the surface value of things, people prefer to work with them. And that's also not, there's tens of thousands of people that you could be working with right now that will work with them that wouldn't work and that would work with us, and vice versa. So focus on what you're providing, keep it a simple 4 figures, ideally keep it a monthly retainer if you can. But yeah. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, makes sense. I think that's a very valid point that there are just so many B2B companies that would need a service like this. And there's actually no space for competition. If you think about it, David might send an email today to a potential lead, and he might have the best copy in the world. Tomorrow, you, the person listening to David, might send another. It might not be that great, but the timing of your email might just be better, and you might get that client and David might lose it. So
Exactly.
even the David has more experience. So the market is huge, and the timing and when they need it matters that much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're completely right. So, don't get too lost in the mist of, well, David or so-and-so or whoever runs an agency and they're much bigger and people are going to work with them more no, we were signing clients signing clients now that at surface value would have gone with a much larger competitor. And we know that because we're in communities with them where they're looking for a provider. The bigger provider comes up and they're actually, work with David, right? Because there's other selling points. We're a small company. You get to speak to me. You don't get to speak to the CEO of whatever other competitors there are out there. So, and people work with people. They might like you more than they like me. Like, that's just a fact. Yeah, don't focus on what you can't control. Focus on what you can control. It's the number of emails that you send, the price that you have, it's how good you deliver the service. Don't focus on the competition or the marketplace or anything like that. Just send the emails, see what works, and then see more of what works.
Makes sense, absolutely. So lastly, David, thank you very much for sharing all your experience. I think this episode has been a gold mine overall for anyone who is just starting off. They can understand everything from offer creation to building lists, sending emails, and prices and everything.
Yeah.
So, what would be some of your last suggestions on some resources, websites, or places where people can learn more about the cold email in general or building an agency outreach? Any communities you would like to recommend people to join?
Yeah, sure. So the Smart Lead community is one that I've been a member of for well over a year now. They're solid. I had a whole bunch of people on LinkedIn. I always it might not even be from someone that I know, but just random people on LinkedIn, like myself, for example, that post things here and there. You can have me on David Sinclair Black.
So as David said, you guys can follow him as well on LinkedIn. And that's pretty much it for this one. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you again, David, for joining us today and helping out everyone who wants to start an outreach agency.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Okay.